Welcome. This recording is from my 2017 Going Beyond Revenue Summit, and my conversation is with business coach and author Leslie Hassler. Leslie and I met in Texas, and I was instantly drawn to her kick-ass personality. But she's also one of the first people I've met at a business training or networking event that actually wanted to talk about what it was like to be in business, not just what we do, not that small talk, but actually what it's like to be, have roadblocks, get stuck in the muck. It was a great experience for me. I then learned she was right in the middle of writing her book, First This, Then That, which is a book on how to do intentional growth. So if you've not checked it out, please do so. My interview with Leslie touches on a couple things that I've not talked about with many people. One was how a natural disaster was the roadblock for one of her businesses. And I say that because a lot of businesses I've worked with, and you'll hear this in the interview, never talk about a natural disaster or a fire or anything that might impact the delivery system of their business, which can affect their cash flow. And the importance of perhaps shifting that a little bit into the planning stage. We also talk about what it's like, the pitfall that's created, let's say that, when we don't create self-funding for our growth. Myself and a lot of my clients have gotten a credit card or a line of credit and then stumbled on getting that repaid. So by shifting our intention and creating a self-funding or becoming your own bank, how that can create less stress around it. So we talk about that. And of course, she gives me the best visual I could have ever asked for, which is a champagne tower. And I really love the vision that she shares about how, as just a vision I can keep in my head to remind myself about my impact in action and how that creates this compounding effect of change in the world that I want to create. And so please enjoy this interview with Leslie Hassler. I really enjoyed it.
Every business that I talk to, and I know I've experienced a few, is that rock bottom moment, that place where you're at the bottom and you're looking up wondering how the hell did you get here?
Yeah.
Did you have one in your business? And if you did, what was it?
No, I didn't have one at all.
At all? Oh my gosh.
I'm one of those perfect people. Yes, of course I had one. I don't think that if you're really getting out there and trying to learn and trying to push your envelope and you don't have a rock bottom moment, well, count your blessings. But I think it's more of a rite of passage that entrepreneurs go through on their journey. Some hurt more than others. So I have a couple, but I think my biggest one, and I almost have to build you the watch to tell you the time on this. But when I started my first business, like you were saying, I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have such and such. I had a marketing advertising background, so I could whip together, a SWOT analysis super, super fast. But that was about the extent of my business planning. I call myself an accidental entrepreneur because I found out on Wednesday that I wasn't going to have a job on Monday. And I opened up my business, I think, on Monday or Tuesday of the next week. So 5 days of planning went into that. And we were very lucky, very fortunate, and the business really took off. And we were getting into multiple six figures within the first year of business. And that doesn't happen for everyone, but it was good time. So people were spending money. And I really remember thinking to myself, man, I got this business stuff down. I don't know what everybody else's problems were. I'm good. I got it down. And I wasn't working hard. I was working part-time. I think I was working 3 days a week and spending 2 days with my kids and just rocking and rolling, hiring staff and moving on. And that continued probably for the first 18 months of our business. And then we had, unfortunately, like we've seen so much this year, I was living in Houston and we had Hurricane Ike came through Houston and kind of shut the city down. It's Hurricane Ike up until this last hurricane season was the third largest storm damage hurricane. We've seen quite a few this season, but there's this interesting thing about natural disasters is you get to recover personally, and that may take a while. You know, we had damage to our house. We lost power for 10 days, you know, in Ike and all these things, but relatively we were fine. And our cities that have been affected lately are seeing that it's actually so much of a bigger issue now. But then you have to do disaster recovery on the business. And I wasn't prepared to have disaster recovery on my business. And so I did what I think a lot of people do, and I kind of played the wait and see game. I got to tell you, wait and see doesn't get you crap. It just gets you more deeper in the hole. But I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. And so I was waiting to see, like everybody else, trying to figure out how to restructure my business now that my market had changed. And lo and behold, the recession comes, like not even just months afterwards. And I lost about 50% of my business. Pretty much, it felt like overnight. I tell people, I felt like I had been on the beach, which I love to be on, and there was, you know, the sun was warming my skin, and the breeze was kind of kissing my cheek, and the birds were chirping, and it was just so lovely. And then somebody like picked me up, threw me in a box, put tape on it, turned off all the lights, and said, "Have a good day." I really didn't know what happened, and I was completely left in the dark. So I called that my dark time, my dark period, because for 2 years I struggled to try to figure out how to bring my business back. I felt personally responsible that I hadn't done something quote unquote right. I felt like I needed to punish myself. And the way that I punished myself was I stopped paying myself. I paid my team, but I stopped paying myself. I figured I wasn't working hard enough, you know, and that's why I lost my business. So I worked longer and harder, and I went from, you know, working 3 days a week to working about between 60 and 80 hours a week, because I was going to hustle and grind it. You know, I was going to force my way back into profitability and back into my business. And there was a couple of things, I guess the culmination of my slide down to my rock bottom. I was sitting in a conference with 100 other businesses that did what I did at the time. And I just felt like they all had it together and I didn't. And I had just gotten a message from my staff. I think it was even up to 3 employees. So I'm up to 3 employees with half of the business not paying myself, just in case that you'd missed that part, because it really was stupid. But we had just redesigned our logo. And we were paying for stationery. This was 2011, like envelopes, station letterhead, business cards, and of course everyone had to have business cards. And so I approved the cost, and I think it was something around $311. So it wasn't like it was even crazy. But I remember going, okay, yeah, we've got to do this because we're doing everything we can to bring business back. And I was like, I guess I should check on my business account. And I kind of checked in my account, and I had $111. And I was like, I said a choice word or two in my head. And I had payroll due in 5 days. And not just payroll due in 5 days, a $5,000 payroll due in 5 days. I was sitting in New York City. I mean, this is where I started going. I'm like, I'm sitting in New York City. I'm paying through the nose for a hotel. I have no money to be here on the hope that it might do something for my business. I just approved $311 of stationery, and I have a $5,000 payroll, and I have no freaking idea how I'm going to pay for it.
That's rock bottom.
Oh, yeah, baby. You know, the room started to spin, if that gives you any indication. And I have kind of a backbone of steel, but I was having a hard time keeping it together in the middle of those 100 people in a ballroom, you know. And I remember going, okay, yeah, I can't keep going. I don't have anything left. Everything I've tried, what worked for you, let me go make it work for me attempt that I made just wasn't moving the needle. And I was like, I need to stop. I was like, I either need to put up or shut up, like shut the doors and just shut this puppy down, because this is not what I signed up for. And I sat there and I was like, okay, am I ready to quit? And I was like, not yet, because I'm stubborn as all get out. And I was like, okay, if you're not ready to quit, then here's what you got. I was having my own come to Jesus meeting. And I was like, you either go get some help, or you've got 6 months and you're done. You're not doing this anymore. And so I actually decided to get some help. I went and got a business coach that I aligned with, that when we talked, I could understand, and who I felt comfortable could help me get where I wanted to be. And it was a great move, right? And I had done masterminds and all this stuff before. What I found out in that darkest moment, and what I came to realize, because working with a coach, we grew the business back, I have to say, 150% in 6 months. So
Wow.
everything I lost and then some. And, that's interesting. But there were a couple of things I learned. One is you can actually have a poorly constructed business in good times and make money. You cannot have that same poorly constructed business in bad times and make money. It doesn't work. And so good business is nothing more than good math. So at that time, I wouldn't say I ever had a cash flow report. I wouldn't tell you that we ran a marketing plan or anything. We were kind of like you were saying, going by the seat of our pants, and money was coming in the door, so we must be doing something right. But what I really found out that my business was lacking was business foundations. Here's the thing I tell people all the time when I'm coaching or if I'm speaking or something. I'm like, guess what? I did not go to Peru and find a long lost secret on business success, because it's not lost. There's just business truths, and it's whether or not you choose to pay attention to them, or you choose to get distracted by the shiny objects and the sexiness and make $100,000 in 30 days. You too can have passive income. Those are all the sexiness things, but you still have to have the business foundations. And those are just universal truths. They've been around for a very long time. I just share my twist on them. So, I remember that my rock bottom moment every day. I don't want to do my cash flow report because we're human and we don't want to see what it tells us.
Right.
Right. Or I don't want to look at my numbers, or I don't want to do the homework that I need to do in my business. But I remember that moment and I'm like, yeah, but that was when the lights got turned back on. And knowledge is power. If we go, what is that? The School of Rock? Knowledge is power. It really is. And business is really actually quite simple. We are the ones that make it complicated. So that's, I guess, my rock bottom moment, but also what I learned coming out of it on the other side.
Mm-hmm. That's great. This is the whole reason we're having the summit. Thank you so much for the clarity on it.
There you go.
And that we're not alone, because my story is similar. And there are hundreds of business owners that have these same stories. And so this is just shining the light. So I'm going to jump ahead on the question since you brought it up. So people, bookkeepers, accountants, business owners have different explanation of what profit is.
Yeah.
And then of what we do for tracking. And I'm going to think the tracking you do is some foundational things our listeners could take from. So how do you think of profit now? And it probably changed from when you first started. And is there a daily thing that you do that helps you keep track of it?
So how do I think of profit? Simply put, profit's the money that is left over and sticks around.
Okay.
The thing about, and we've had these conversations, revenue does not equal profit, and that does not equal cash, right? Those are all three different things. And so we have to understand, I think from a profit standpoint to me, is in order for me to have cash, I have to have enough profit to stick around and stay. And so I think when I first started business, everybody gets their profit and loss statements from their bookkeeper, and you're like, oh, look, I made a profit. And then you look up and go, well, where the hell is it? Sorry. You know,
Yeah.
you're like, where is it? Because you've worked hard for it. You want to see it. And when you look at your bank account, it ain't there. And so I think that's what I thought about profit. What I know about profit today is I think what happens is a business, everyone's like, put your shingle out, just go out and get new clients. If you follow your passion, the money will follow. Yeah. If you don't plan for profit, there's not a profit fairy that comes over and like magically waves her wand in front of you and decides that you finally have earned profit.
I'd really like that though.
I know, wouldn't we all? So I look at profit is, you know, you have to plan for profit way in the beginning. And it's really interesting because I'll take my clients through a pricing exercise and then I ask them, how much profit would you like to make? And they look at me like I've got a third eye. And I'm like, here's this crazy thing. Because it's your business and it's your voodoo that you do so well and your clients and your bank account and your name at the top of the, you know, responsibilities, you get to choose. You get to choose. So why not make a choice? And now profit's going to look different, you know, for if you've got a product-based business, tends to be you have lower profit because you're driving volume and therefore you make bigger dollars there. If you're service-based, this is the kicker, right? Is you have to price for profitability because guess what? You have up times and down times. You have points of time if it's just you and your business where you go in and you create and you're not selling as much. And so you have to have that profit there to be able to weather storms, to be able to have a 3 to 6 month emergency cash system should you be in a disaster and have a way to recover from that. So I look at profit really on, we start from the very beginning, like as soon as I can get in with a client, I'm looking at their pricing. And pricing is such a deeply personal. I loved it earlier when you're like, let's get naked. I was laughing because, you know, some days I think that's what my clients think I'm asking them to do is get naked in front of me, stand on the middle of the table, and let's all look at you. Because there's some things about business that are intensely personal, and pricing is one of those things. It tends to be a reflection of the value you feel you bring to the table. Not really what your clients necessarily feel. It starts first with you. And so if we can plan for that in the beginning, then we're more likely to have it at the end. And I think if all we're ever worried about is chasing clients, then A, we leave a lot of money on the table, but B, it's actually really hard. You know, and people aren't in tune with their business model and the profitability discussion in order to know how to choose the right business model for their goals, for the right profit levels that they're trying to kind of bring to the table. So I think profit is, like I said, revenue doesn't equal profit, doesn't equal cash, and you have to keep that in mind. But if you start planning for it beginning early in your business, and if you're in business for a while, you can plan for it tomorrow. Lucky you, you have momentum, and you can impact things much quicker than for startups. But if you plan for it, then you have something to track against, right? You've got a benchmark. So everybody's profit number is different. And it should be different because everybody's business is different. I happen to be an immersion quick thinker. I don't know if you've gotten that yet. I tend to talk fast too. So what I can do in a shorter period of time is real quick. So if all I worried about was charging by the hour, I would never make any money, not for the value of what I provide. So you just have to do that. You've got to make that personal decision in your pricing. Don't operate by what I call stick your finger in the air, where, you know, you lick your finger and you stick it in the air to see which way the wind is blowing.
Right.
Everybody loves $75 an hour. It's crazy. I've yet to see a business that can be profitable on $75 an hour. So ignore what everybody else is doing and figure out what works for you in your business for the goals that you're trying to achieve. And then once you set that benchmark, just track simply of how profitable were we actually on this, and define a benchmark so that you have a gauge of being able to do a quick dashboard on your computer and be able to know how you're doing. We had a process in my first business where we did a lot of pricing, plus we resold. So we bought it wholesale and then we retailed back to the client, but we always had the choice of different products had different profit margins. All right. So it was a complicated business, but we always had a gut check before that invoice went to the client. My team would bring that piece of paper to me, and the single thing I paid attention to was, what's the profit margin? Where are we on a gross profit margin on this? You know, are we at the right markup? Are we at the right margin? Because we had a range, and we had to stay within that range for the viability of our business. So before the even clients saw it, we were looking at it, right? We just knew what our profitability was going in the door. And if I needed to make a deal, I knew how much of a deal I could make and still be profitable.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think I'm hearing the screaming of the listeners about, they don't want to track it. They don't want to, they aren't number people. They don't want to get into there. And I hear that too. And you don't need an accounting tool immediately. You can do it on paper. You can't, you don't have to be fancy about it. I think the biggest learning opportunity I had on this subject was when I first started looking. I was having a hard time bringing in a senior bookkeeper, and it's because I kept only having my fee in there. And so I would replace the revenue for a bookkeeper, but I didn't have the revenue for me, the owner, and the senior bookkeeper into my plan. And that's why I could never find a way to replace myself out of that work, is there was only room for one person. And so it does require a plan. So I'm going to ask a question that you don't know, but since we're going down this area here. So what do you do for those people that are really pushing back, that I'm not number people? There's just no way I could do that. What's an easy way for them to track that?
So I'm going to give you a twofold answer.
Okay.
One, you're not going to like.
Okay.
Put your big girl panties on and get over yourself.
Thank you.
Okay. Here's the thing about math and numbers is I'm going to tell you, I didn't want to do it either. I really didn't, but it was the single biggest thing that gave me control over my business. And so what I found out is, what I want from my business is freedom. What I want from my business is joy. Does not having money to make payroll give me joy? No, it does not. Right? So I do the things necessary to give me the joy that I want. Right? And it's just like brushing your teeth. Have you ever tried to get your kids to brush your teeth? Brusha, right? It's not fun. There's just some things you've got to do. And if you're going to be in business, and if good business is good math, then you need to just put your big girl panties on and get over yourself. So that's number one.
Okay.
My tough love for you. My number two is, well, goodness gracious, get over trying to do it yourself, because there's no gold star in business because you did it versus somebody else. So if you rarely can't, you're dyslexic with numbers, you really can't process that way, you're such a creative thinker that you can't even make yourself sit still long enough to figure them out, then delegate the job, but don't abdicate. Right? There's a difference there. Delegate and know what your benchmarks are. Like I said, gave you the example where my team did all the pricing and they filled out the checklist that said where the profitability was. They sent it to me and I signed off on it. Was I doing the numbers?
No,
I wasn't. Right? And the third part of it is that here's this crazy thing about tracking. What if I could give you just like one thing that was so simple, like you could have a sticky notepad and just tick, tick, tick on the notepad. That's pretty easy, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay. The tracking is this one thing in your business that almost whatever you need to improve, if you were to just track it, gives you the likelihood of an instant 10% growth in that area, whatever you're tracking. And that's only because you're more conscious of it.
Mm.
And if your best skill as an entrepreneur is solving a problem, which it really is, that's why we do what we do, that's why we go out on our own, why we're creators in that area, is because we can solve problems. Imagine what your powerful problem-solving brain is thinking about in the shower, when you work out, when you're going to bed at night. It's thinking about subconsciously whatever it is you're tracking. And so it just becomes easy to get growth because you suddenly see opportunities. So there are tools, I use a predictive cash flow tracker that's nearly automatic. And it takes me like 5 minutes to manage because yes, an Excel spreadsheet it gives me a headache too. You can find ways to do it. So get over the I don't like it and find a way to get it done. I tell people all the time that your job as the entrepreneur in the business is not to do all the work. Get over that. That's an employee mindset. Mm-hmm. Your job in the business is to ensure the work gets done. That's a leader. That's success path. That's profitability. So you really, if there's something you don't like, then fine, don't like it. I don't really care if you do or not, but it's still a requirement for success in business. So if you're not going to do it, then have somebody else get it done for you and then check in on it. Don't abdicate. Don't buy into those excuses because it's actually your door to the greatest freedom you will ever have in your business. I mean, peace, calm, freedom, joy comes from tracking this stuff.
So sweet. And a perfect example of why people hire business coaches. And so if you guys didn't really hear that, that was a great example of how Leslie lovingly taps her clients on the ass to get them moving in the right direction. That's why I seek out business coaches. So I have a question. As a business coach, do you have a business coach or do you have accountability partners or masterminds that you run ideas by when you get stuck?
So at the beginning of this year, I will let you know, I was in a very introspective place in my business. I've been in business for 10 years now. Mm-hmm. This is my second and a half business. I had a half business in there that I kind of shut down. And so I was in a very introspective place. And so I did go into a mastermind where it's much more of a peer kind of group versus a guru or leader-led type of a group. Right. And part of that was just for community because I found I'd isolated myself again. It's so easy to do as an entrepreneur. And so I forced myself because I don't like to waste money into a community. But I tell you, I probably get just as much from conversations and connecting, just like you and I connected a couple months ago and had a great conversation. I find that those lead me to light bulb moments. I'm pretty good at accountability. If I'm going to get something done, I'm getting it done. Get out of my way because it's going to happen. I really need people to pour in another point of view, or if I'm tinkering on an idea, be able to say, oh, by the way, look at this, look at that. So I need that. I always need constant influx of input. And so I make sure that I get that through either connecting calls, just ongoing conversations that you just never know where they're going to lead. And sometimes they turn into strategic partners. Sometimes they turn into opportunities. Sometimes they just turn into great friendships. So I really do work hard on the not isolating myself, even though it happens to me. Because that's really, I believe in that collective mind that you get from a mastermind. I just kind of probably do it in a different way. But I do have one mastermind, but I do have mentors. So I'm at a stage in my business, like I said, that I can do really well. So I just need to go learn. I need to go learn that next skill that I need, and I can do that in an immersion style, and then I can go do, and that's my rhythm. That's what I like.
Yeah. Well, it's key that people understand that it's a multiple, and the summit has people doing it in different ways. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great example. Well, so that we can keep this in a timely fashion, let's end on an inspiration.
Sure.
So our business originally helped pay, replace that employee paycheck after you had 5 days to get ready to be an entrepreneur. That's what it originally did, was contribute to the household and things. But now, as you've evolved again, what does the business provide you now for your life?
So there's two things, and interestingly, this has been on my brain the last week. One is I've always had a pay it forward kind of aspect of my business. I love to see the difference in people's lives, and I know I can help them do that through their business, but I just impact life through business. And I've always had that, pay it forward kind of filling the cup. But I'm at a point in time to where my business, those champagne towers where they have
Yeah.
all the goblets and they pour the champagne from the top and it just fills every cup below.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
have a massive one in front of me. And I am at that point in time to where I'm looking at filling all those cups. And it's crazy because I'm going to flow into my direct contacts and clients, right? But I've got a platform that I'm looking at that's just about enabling the next person down to start flowing it forward and flowing it forward and flowing it forward. And that is really what's inspiring me right now. And it's actually calling me to be much larger in my business and how I show up in the world. But I just see myself as the champagne that, starts it all. And then the compound effect can take place. So I love my freedom. I'm completely unemployable. Don't ask. Somebody did ask me, they're like, we're going to hire you. And I was like, no, you're not. I was like, they're like, we'll make you an offer you can't refuse. And I'm like, I'm telling you, it's not within my spirit to be an employee. So, my business does give me that freedom. But for right now, man, I want to fill that champagne goblet tower and really do it in a way that adds value to people's lives.
What a beautiful visual there. That was very inspiring, Leslie. I so appreciate. We could actually talk. There were so many little tangents I really want to ask you about, but because of time, we will just do another conversation later, because that's what Going Beyond Revenue is about. And the new year is about having these conversations and taking them a little deeper. So so many great takeaways. Look, your champagne tower is probably the best one. That visual and how your impacted actions create change and a compound effect is beautiful. Oh my gosh, where do I start? I do recommend this. I have written a blog post on this. Plan for natural disasters for your life in your business. The wait and see doesn't get you crap. Just deeper in the hole. And so many people don't do that, and it can be as much as an actual natural disaster, a flood, a hurricane, but it can also be without power or a security breach. We have to actually take action now to do those. And I don't think businesses, I've worked with businesses since the early 80s. I don't think I have ever worked for any business that had a natural disaster plan. I cannot think back, like it was part of, as an employee, it was part of their manual or anything like that. Might be different here in Oregon. So that was one of the big takeaways. So to create some plan, it's probably not as fun to do, but it's good to have. Strong foundation equals good business. And you get to choose what your profit is. It definitely does. All starts with pricing. It's funny, when I first talk to people about the profit first model, they immediately think they've got to cut all their costs and cut their fat. And while we'll do that, there probably is a lot of shiny little bottle, some things that you really don't need in your expenses. It's not all just that. It really does. The next step is, once you decide to, as cash comes in, and make an intentional plan of how you handle it, is looking at that revenue.
Because it's not about saving, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what people think is that it's about saving. And I hear so many businesses, well, I need to save the money, da, 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 da. And I love that you brought that up, because business isn't about saving, right? Business is about investing with intention, like you just said, putting intention to things to maximize the return on the investment.
Mhm. Yeah.
So if you can shift the way you think about money, and I love Profit First for that too, and that's really even a bigger shift. For this is not a break even exercise. You're not balancing a checkbook.